to hop in to this call, and then because we're on LinkedIn Live, we'll just see who else joins in. Obviously, if you guys want to let us know you're here, if you have any questions, please say so in the chat. Bailey, maybe you can keep an eye on that, make sure that we have a chance to answer people's questions. Yeah, but I can go ahead and set a little bit of context for this call. Honestly, I wish we could be having this conversation like for multiple hours. There's like so much I want to explore. So maybe we'll have a part two if we can't get to it all. But my goal today is to really spend some time exploring how entrepreneurs' brains are different and what implications that we think this has on the future of work. So we'll look at hey Fletcher, we'll look at some interesting patterns that I think that we're noticing, that research is bringing up. I think there's some really good statistics coming out there, especially you guys have heard me say this a million times. By 2027, over 50% of the workforce will be independent, working for themselves. I think we know that there's some patterns. It's a different kind of breed of people who hop into it. And anyway, so we're going to spend some time kind of looking at that stuff. We've got some really interesting people joining the call. And I'll give you guys time here in a little bit to really introduce yourselves and get into it. But we've got Justin Oberman. He's not on yet. Hopefully he joins here, but he has a business where he's been working with generalists. Charlotte has been coaching and helping people get out of jobs they fucking hate. I love your brand, by the way. I think that's so fun. We got Fletcher on the call, who's building a technology that I really think is going to bridge some gaps between entrepreneurs and people who are still kind of in the system, working traditional jobs. And we've got Anna on the call, who's a PhD in neuroscience and psychology. So there's a lot of different areas that we can explore together. And I'll do my best to allow some space within the container to explore as we want, but I will play the role in bringing us back to the goal of exploring how we think this will impact the future, because that's what I'm most interested in this call. Awesome. So I guess before we open it up and dive into the conversation, there are a few stats that I think are really interesting, just to kind of dangle a carrot, and maybe some definitions that I want to align on to help shape the conversation. But so in preparing for this call, I was kind of updating myself on more current research, and it may be no surprise to you guys, but the majority of people who are self-employed are generalists, not specialists. It doesn't mean you can't go out on your own as a specialist. And I think especially 50% of the population is going to be doing that. We're going to see more and more people. But historically, it's been the generalists who say, peace out, I'm doing my own thing. Another interesting stat is people with ADHD are 500% more likely to be entrepreneurs. And the other stat that I thought was worth mentioning is only 30% of the population lead with intuition versus 70% of the population who lead with sensing. So if anyone has a Myers-Briggs background, that's a framework really pulled from Carl Jung. So whether us on this call identify as neurodivergent or as a generalist or an intuitive or perhaps all of them, I think the reality is we have been living in a world that really doesn't feel like it was designed for us. Yeah. And so I'm just kind of curious. I wonder if the tide's turning and what that might mean for the future of work. And I guess the reason I'm curious to explore that is it feels like a lot of the systems and structures that were built, healthcare, education, government, etc., very, very systemic in nature. It kind of feels like they're struggling right now. Yeah. And it's kind of time for some reinvention. And then we're looking at AI and how that's coming into the picture. And AI is just uncharted territory. And so anyway, there's the convergence of all these things, which I think is kind of an interesting conversation to have. And yeah, and I guess maybe we'll probably talk about neurodivergence and generalists. So I want to give you guys some definitions so we can kind of all be on the same page when we're using these words. What's up, Oberman?
Oh,
Welcome.
thank you.
Hey, just to kind of pull you into the big picture of this conversation, the goal is to explore how entrepreneurs' brains are a bit different and what implications we feel this has on the future of work. And I'll pull you here into the conversation in a bit when we really start talking about generalists, if that's cool. So yeah, neurodivergent is a term that really describes people whose brains work a bit differently. I'm seeing stats, maybe Anna, but it kind of looks like right now they're accounting for about 20% of the population being neurodivergent versus neurotypical. And that's really speaking to some sort of difference in someone's ability to focus, recognize patterns, or recall factual information. And it's a spectrum. So you could have some like genius superpowers here and maybe some needs here or some sort of combination of both. And then within that category, it's just like this growing list of conditions that really qualify someone to be neurodivergent. I definitely do not have the exhaustive list, but some of the more common ones that you guys might be familiar with are ADHD, autism, dyslexia, synesthesia, which is an interesting one, especially if you're in the more like spiritual space. I feel like a lot of like creatives and spiritual people talk about this a lot, which is like the ability to see colors, a lot of like wires getting crossed between sensory perceptions. So that's kind of like one universe that I think we can explore in this conversation. And then there's the generalist universe, and that the term generalist really describes people who are jacks of all trade, masters of some, masters of none. Their interests are generally very wide and broad, very, very varied, as opposed to specialists who really like to learn one thing really well and dive super deep. These are the kind of people, I mean, I'm one of them for sure. People who love to wear multiple hats, aren't very good at staying in their lanes. They're often drawn to startups or entrepreneurship because more corporate environments keep them feeling very limited. And I know, Charlotte, you work with a lot of people in this space.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last term I want to define is intuitive. I mentioned Carl Jung and the Myers-Briggs, but this is really people who trust their intuition over their senses. And so people who prefer intuition are really good at rapid pattern connecting. They read between the lines, they jump to conclusions, they follow their gut. There's some interesting research connecting intuition to trauma. I don't have enough personal, context or expertise in this space to go deep into that. But I do think it's kind of worth mentioning that, maybe if you grew up in a complicated environment as a kid, not being able to take things at face value might be something that really caused you as a child to really hone that intuition versus sensing, which is just taking in information with what you see, what you hear, what you feel, just kind of taking things as they are, trusting things. Sensors tend to trust things that are actually there, actually measurable, actually tangible. So when we look at how the world, a lot of the systems in the world and the processes and the standard operating procedures and the data, all of those things are very, very sensing. So anyway, that was a lot. That was a big info dump, but I think that just kind of maybe tees up some interesting worlds that we can explore as we talk about entrepreneurship and what we're kind of sensing is happening out there. So maybe where we can go next, Charlotte, I would love to have you introduce yourself and maybe provide some color, because you have some interesting like boots on the ground. You're talking to people who are like working emotionally through this stuff right now. I'm curious what kind of color you could provide to the conversation.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a career coach. I work with generalists, neurodivergents, free spirits, who are pretty much done in with working in corporate, boxed into a specialist role. and fed up with masking themselves, having to hide who they really are. And that's the situation I was in. I worked in tech and marketing for 10 years and just felt like I wasn't able to be myself. I wasn't able to tap into my intuition, my creativity, like who I was. And it's really funny, whenever you mention like sticking to your lanes, that really resonates with me, because I was always getting into trouble for being distracted by other things that seem more interesting. So that's what led me to coaching. So as I said, my clients are generalists. Pretty much all of them are generalists, and most of them are diagnosed as neurodivergent, or they identify as having that kind of brain. And what I'm noticing is pre-COVID, I would say about half of my clients were considering going self-employed. And now that's more like 3/4 of my clients want to start their own thing. So there's definitely a shift. And I think people are realizing that the only way that they can actually be themselves fully is to start their own business. So that's the trends that I'm seeing. And also another trend is the portfolio career. I think like with generalists, we have so many interests, we have so many skills, we have a curiosity for lots of different things. And how can we create a career that allows space for all of that? And so the portfolio career is becoming something that people are looking at. So designing a work week where maybe you have your main business, which makes money, and then you have a sort of side hustle to that, which is maybe your more creative hobby that you want to see if you can make some money with. It's just creating a life where you can have all the things in it. And that's pretty much what I'm doing for myself.
I love that. I love that. Well, I guess like I have so many questions for you. I'm sure people do too. Feel free to like ask Charlotte anything you want in the chat throughout this call. And how long have you been coaching people in this space? How long have you been doing this?
About 5 years.
Okay. And do you have any sort of insight into the people who are successfully stepping out and making this work for themselves? What are they doing that maybe other people are struggling with? Or like like if we're looking at a trend where so many people want to leave work and go start their own thing, like who's making that happen and why?
Good question. It's the people that are really clear on their why, clear on like what's their personal why. So my why is healing and coming home to myself. My outer why is helping other people do the same. So I'm really, really clear on what my spiritual mission is. So that's kind of like acts as like my North Star. So all the decisions that I make, the people that I spend time with, the hobbies that I have, the way I design my business, all points to that North Star, which is really empowering. And so when you're having a bad day, when you're afraid, when you're doubting yourself, you've got that North Star to go back to feel the fear and do it anyway.
I have a question, Charlotte. What barriers do you find that people face when they're trying to make this transition? Like from corporate, from something where you get healthcare and you have like a standard salary and reliability and predictability, you know, what are those barriers, and then how do you help them overcome those barriers?
I mean, there's quite a lot of barriers. Money is a big one. So we might explore, I mean, there's the practicality of you need money to live, right? But there's also, once you dig a bit deeper in the coaching process, you can sometimes identify money fears that go back to childhood. So perhaps a single parent that was struggling financially, and that fear got pushed onto the child, so the person that I'm coaching. So we kind of go a bit deeper into those fears, into the nuance of what that fear really is. Is it a rational money fear, or is it a deeper fear of what if I run out of money and I lose control and I'm unsafe and insecure in the world? So it's going deeper into the fears. So that's one part of it. The other way of dealing with the fears, again, is that North Star. It's like I've got a fear, but I've also got this bright, shining ambition and mission in the world to help me move through the fear. And then just sort of general self-doubt. I'm not good enough. I expect we can all relate to that one. What will others think? I mean, that's a huge one. What will others think if I do something crazy like start my own business? Like, who am I to start a business? Like all this chatter. So I always try and give that space to get to know that inner critic and not push past it and ignore it, because it is there and it's probably not going to go away.
Are there like specific challenges for different neurodivergent categories that you help overcome those particular challenges, like ADHD, attention, focusing, and etc.?
Yeah, so I'd say with clients that have ADHD, which is the kind of neurodivergence that I see most commonly, that's getting shit done tends to be the problem. Wanting to do so many things at once and wanting to jump right into your new career right away. And I think that's where having a coach is really helpful, is being able to first create the North Star vision and then come up with a plan of how you're going to do it step by step. And then having someone there for accountability, and also someone there to help you celebrate each step that you take is really, really important. And then with, I have a few autistic clients. So I'm diagnosed with ADHD and I identify as autistic. So my autistic clients, I think it's about being seen, putting yourself out there, being seen, and being comfortable. Like, for example, putting yourself on LinkedIn. Any other questions?
I just want to say thank you for explaining that. I think that's pretty wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I guess my next question maybe is for Fletcher. You have been freelancing for, I don't even remember, 14 years, 16 years. You've been doing it longer than most people have. And as a result, you've worked with so many different types of creatives, having worked for agencies and I think almost 50% of Fortune 50s. You've really dove into some really interesting creative work. And I know we've had many, many conversations around being a creative and being able to showcase what you do, collaborate with teams, work with clients. And I think you have a really good pulse on who's naturally the most successful and who struggles and why. So I'm just curious, like, what kind of things have you seen? What kind of insights do you have to share with us?
Yeah, one thing I'd say, and it's been, I think, 18 years now. 18 years, yeah, of freelance work. And one thing I kind of am realizing as we're talking about this, which is really interesting, is I'm also an Intuit, which you said is 30%, right? And what I thought was really fascinating, I'm now seeing this as a pattern as I look back at other creatives who are more than capable of going out and doing their own thing, yet still mentally block themselves from like exploring that and like actually having like the life that they want to live. Charlotte, kind of like what you're talking about, is that they just don't. And this is how I was. It took me 10 years or so before I realized like that I had a repeatable process to something, because I kept thinking I was just using my gut to get through something and kind of like creating magic every time. And that created like a sense of like untrust. I think also in myself I had to get over, where it's like every time I get a new project, I'm like, gosh, I hope the magic happens again. I don't know how I do it, but I tend to keep doing it. But then 10 years later, I was like, okay, I don't think it's just magic, because it seems to happen over and over again. And I was finally challenged by someone who wasn't into it, who was a censor, which there's a lot of strife between the I's and S's. And so I had to really like kind of humble myself and take their input, because they told me, hey, you need to document what you do. And I was kind of offended at that. I thought like, what do you mean document magic? Like you can't, like that's impossible. But then I finally did it, and I kind of went on this like 3-4 year journey where I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't just repeatable, but this is incredible. And I wish I would have told myself this 10 years ago. It would have diluted so much unwanted stress that I was kind of putting myself through, thinking I was reinventing the wheel every time. And so when I went through that myself, then as I was working with other creatives and people, I realized they're doing the same thing. They doubt themselves. For everyone, they know they can do it, but they're doubting themselves. And just that, like, that process. I mean, there's one guy in particular that, like, just walking, I started doing these like 6-week courses with people, or I just have them on and we talk through what the process looks like. And it was amazing to see, like, their own confidence match their skill, right? Their skill was already there 100%. They were more than capable of doing incredible work consistently. But then just seeing and documenting and understanding there's a process, there's a like a way to do it, then their confidence matched that, and they were supercharged, and they were able to, like, kind of approach they were ready to go and, like, introduce themselves to LinkedIn, right? Because before that, they didn't have that confidence. But that was a massive trend I think I saw as I was working with a number of people and kind of giving them that same realization to document what their process was.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to come back to you because there's some other really interesting conversations I think you could shed some light on. But Justin, would love to give you a chance to introduce yourself and talk about your experience as a generalist trying to build, a name in that space. Yeah. Who are you and what are you interested in sharing with us today?
Oh man, I'm not even wearing my generalist hat, which I think is part of anyone who's kind of studied Edward de Bono. Wearing the different hats is an important thing, and I actually quite literally do that. I was working on copywriting before and advertising, so I put on my advertising specialist hat to do that. But yeah, so thank you. This is fascinating to me on many fronts, just because I don't identify as neurodivergent. I am. I've been diagnosed with ADD since I was in the 9th grade, I think. Before that, it was a lot of like mismatched diagnoses, and was one of the early people put on Ritalin or whatever it was. And it's new to me to see a lot of people talking about it very openly, like on social media and whatnot, because to me it was always something that you kind of just, it wasn't like a shame thing, but it was just something that you just didn't talk about openly. And you certainly didn't talk about it and demand respect at work for it, as like a handicap almost. It seemed like something that would certainly get you fired. I just so it's been an interesting time, so I guess the generalist thing was sort of like my way of turning it into a superpower. And I very quickly, I remember my psychiatrist when I was younger also was very supportive in this sense and said, and we don't know if this is true or not, but it probably is, talked about Leonardo da Vinci, and how Leonardo da Vinci, many people think, you could diagnose him with some sort of attention deficit disorder. He very rarely finished any of his projects. If you look at his notebooks, they're just all over the place. Curiosity was his engine. And it so happened to be that, he came from a rich family, and he was at the right place at the right time where that type of thinking was in demand and respected, and people would actually pay for it. But he did get in a lot of trouble. The Mona Lisa was like stolen. Mona Lisa's not finished. The hands aren't finished. And a lot of people don't know that. Like, very few of his paintings are actually finished. And he it was pulled away from him. So like there's a lot to like take in from that, right? Like, at the one point, okay, here's the most celebrated man in the world, but up until his death, he considered himself pretty much failure. that never really achieved all the things that he wanted to achieve, and of course he died in a beautiful room as a working for a king. But I think of what Charlotte was talking about a little bit, like that ambition, that drive to like want to do so many things, definitely is there. And then later on in life, so without really knowing kind of what to do with my life, I as a generalist, I guess, right, I went into advertising and copywriting, which just seemed like the best place to go for my desires, for all my interests, right? Because that's like the one place I get to like dive into so many different businesses and whatnot. So that's just like the personal side of it. In terms of being a generalist, during my explorations in advertising, I discovered this man. He's kind of considered the punk rock of ad history, named Howard Luck Gossage. So you have like Ogilvy, Bill Bernbach, Rosser Reeves, and Howard Gossage, and he was in San Francisco. And he just did things very differently, and he criticized advertising and whatnot. And interestingly enough, he started a company, a consultancy with a sort of the Dr. Phil of the time. This guy, Jerry Fagan, who was a proctologist and a ventriloquist. I think he did that as a joke. But and the name of the firm was Generalist. It was Generalist Inc. And they sold themselves as consultants for people and brands who aren't getting what they want from specialists because what they're missing is the big picture. And what they would just do is solve kind of interesting problems, either problems that people didn't like know where to go with them, or like advertising like just wasn't working, or he would look at a client's problem and be like, oh, you don't need advertising for this, you need just to do this instead. And it really is about sort of taking a step back and saying, okay, here's your problem. Sales are down. What we're going to do is we're not going to assume any solution. And in fact, we're going to purposefully come up with and ask stupid questions and dumb ideas so that we can come up and bring in like voices from disciplines that seemingly have nothing to do with what you're talking about, to kind of force the issue. And so when I learned about that, I sort of dove into that a little bit, I guess, in an ADD sort of obsessive way of saying, wow, Leonardo da Vinci, if you look at all of the sort of great inventions that have ever happened in the world, and I don't say this lightly, maybe it's 99% of them have happened by accidents. They're either like accidents, or they're or forced on purpose accidents. And so my question, I've just become obsessed with, can that be replicated on purpose? So in a weird way, I want to, while I have to work on my own other faults of just being a pure generalist and not being able to get practical things done, I think the extreme other way, right? There are people who are just so obsessed with that part of it that they actually can never really come up with good ideas or actually ever solve their problems. So can you teach generalist thinking to people in a way in order to sort of replicate that process? And history proves that you can. And I think people who are generalists understand that in a way that you can. And I've had some really interesting experiences doing that. And there's sort of like nothing better than watching a person get out of their comfort zone, and then like their eyes light up when all of a sudden they're like, I never would have thought of that before. And they just, and what's amazing now is that they're a total left brain person, so they can go and put that into action. And so in a way, they're almost the most dangerous people, right? Like once they learn the process, like can steal the process of being a generalist, they become a force. Which, you know, I think a lot of the most successful in the world people are just naturally. And so, and I just think that there's just only probably 5 or 10 of them in the world at once or something like that. So I think that's been my experience. I could really just go on and on about generalist and generalist thinking and whatnot, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Thanks, Justin. It's been fun getting to know you over the past couple of weeks and hearing more about your journey there. And I want to talk. I want to pull Bailey into the conversation because a lot of us on the call have many years in the workforce, and we've had to navigate living in a world where there wasn't a ton of language for this or support for this, and now there is. But you're Gen Z, and you're all over TikTok and Instagram, and your generation is, I believe, really diving full speed into this. So I would love for you to paint a picture of the lay of the land and what you're seeing out there.
Yeah. I think it's to Justin's point, you know, he said that when he was diagnosed with ADHD, it wasn't really a thing that you went out and told people about. And it certainly wasn't a thing that you asked for accommodations for. And I think that as we are learning about just the frequency at which neurodivergencies are occurring. I know you said it's maybe only 20%, and perhaps like attracts like, and so that's why me and all of my friends and all the people that I work with feel very similarly. But you know, people are not only becoming more comfortable with their diagnoses, but I think that more people are learning about the benefits of these accommodations, even people that may not have ADHD, but may just struggle to focus sometimes. You know, hey, using a visual timer is good. You know, or hey, maybe you don't feel like you are someone on the spectrum, but you might have sensory issues. Like these are things that can help you. And I think that my generation has kind of just decided, like, if I'm going to get work done, whatever we define work as, I need to be in an environment that I don't have to fight against. I think that, you know, I say to people a lot, like, people who are neurodivergent and who have ADHD don't want you to roll out the red carpet for them and make their job super easy. They don't want to have to keep swimming upstream. You know, and so I think that my generation is just a lot more confident in asking for those things. And I also think that we're proving that when you give those accommodations, better work gets done.
Which has quite some big implications on businesses and how they need to be thinking about the next generation and what kind of support looks like. Yeah. Anna, let's pull you in real quick. Let's give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. And I don't even know what to ask you. You know, I really don't. So maybe just like whatever's coming up for you, dive into it.
Well, it's been such a pleasure to listen to everybody's story because I can relate to everybody in different ways. I'm a scientist. I've been trained as a scientist for over 20 years. I worked in many different fields of science, unlike a lot of my peers who specialized in like visual neuroscience for 20 to 40 years of their lives. Like I started working with chimpanzees. I've always worked with philosophers. I've worked with humans, brain damaged patients, criminal psychopaths. I've been across the board. Relatively, that puts me at a disadvantage in a lot of the academic structures because I haven't worked in one field for 20 plus years, but I do see the bigger picture. A lot of people don't believe that scientists are creatives, but you have to be incredibly creative to do science. And a lot of my scientific peers have also left the academic structure because it wasn't facilitating their creative needs. So I relate a lot to that. Just as you can teach a generalist to be a specialist, and I think the generalists here all have specialized in something, like Charlotte, marketing. Justin, was it marketing as well, or media that you were saying that you specialized in? Yeah. You can certainly teach a specialist to be a generalist, although it might be more of an uphill battle for them to open up their eyes, and see that they're capable of putting the pieces together in many different ways. We know from science that not one discipline is the answer, that it is the collection of multiple disciplines which provide us the answer to the bigger pictures. And that's something that I like to promote when I was a professor and when I do contract work for organizations when they're trying to use science to help support their goals. I don't know what else to actually add here other than, I think I've tried to do corporate myself twice, and it doesn't fit with me, and I don't like it. And I think there's a lot of struggles in corporate culture. I think there's a lot of performative action saying, "Oh, we're going to embrace neurodivergence," but I don't think, like they say that with diversity, but I don't think they actually do in their process and in their structure. And so I think there's a great opportunity to explore that, especially with Nicole and her emerging companies, because, I think there's a market here, and it's something we should continue discussing.
Yeah, thanks. I 5 years ago, I worked for a big global agency, and we were on a $8 million account for Procter and Gamble. And it was so systematized. It had to be, right? That's a really big client with a lot of money, a lot of people supporting that account. And I very quickly realized, not that marketing or advertising wasn't for me. I knew that it was, but that system just didn't work for me. Charlotte, I was like you, driving everybody nuts with new ideas and not staying in my lane, and got into some trouble. And I went out on my own, and I was like, I feel like I have some ideas on how to accomplish their goals in a different way. I have ideas on processes that are way more fast and agile and interesting. And I knew that one of my biggest dilemmas in getting these big clients to work with me would be, how do I win their trust when they're when they're prone to look at, show me proof that you've done this in the past. Ultimately, when you're innovating or creating, you don't always have that evidence to show that there's a new way of doing something. And so, not to say that I didn't have good examples I could show from the past, but ultimately what I wanted to do was quite different. And I followed my gut, and over the past 5 years, built multi-million dollar agency working with some of the biggest brands in the world. And I think I would absolutely attribute our success to me building an independent network of generalists. Our core team are people who are highly creative, highly intuitive, expert at what they do, and incredible at collaborating together. And we have a network of 150 people who tend to be more specialists, and we can pull them in as needed. So if we need to go deep into technical SEO or dev or something, we can pull those people in and build these custom teams. And it was amazing to see that business model operate in that way. And as my company started growing, we just naturally hit some challenges with scale, because a lot of the way that we were forming teams was based on intuition or just personal experience that we all kind of collectively had with personality types, which, by the way, I think a lot of us dive into things like Enneagram and Myers-Briggs because we grew up feeling like, I'm different. I need some sort of way to help understand why I'm different. So we explore those worlds for a while, and then we can kind of see, okay, when we're brainstorming, we need someone like Oberman who's a perceiver because he's going to get us into these big, territories. But then we also have to have someone like Fletcher who can make it, convergent and actually clear on next steps. And so that was a very fun, intuitive, creative thing to be doing. But there was a process behind all of that. We just hadn't really documented that either. And we needed to figure out how, like, what is our magic? Back, Fletcher, to your point, what is the magic, not just of the individual, but as the team, as these multiple disciplines working together, and how do we create processes to be able to scale what we're doing and build trust with clients as to why you should work with us versus someone else. So maybe, Fletcher, this might be a good time to tee you up to talk about Jauntboards, and maybe specifically with the lens of how it solves some of these problems coming up of, I do all of these things. I don't know how to share my magic. I don't know how to get clients spending money on my new business when
Yeah.
there's a million other options in the world.
Yeah, definitely. There's also something to say about like our ability to sell ourselves and how like uncomfortable that is. I think I don't know if it's true for everyone in this call, but like there's kind of an allergic reaction to like just the idea of sales and like in some relationship. But we're all open to like conversations that feel relational and kind of following energy with just people that know you and understand you. And so I think what we're trying to build with Jauntboards is this ability to like quickly document what that process is, make that as enjoyable as possible, right? So like being able to put together what that process looks like, and then have a library of your services that kind of sell themselves, right? Like the proof is in the work you've done, and the proof is in the knowledge you have and how it works and how you walk through it, and let that become a tool to like gain trust, and then have a warm conversation with a potential client, right? Where you can actually like you can just talk about the things you care about, which is like the process, the phases, the steps, how they look. I just had that last week with a new client that called me out of the blue, and I was able to just talk the entire time about something I truly cared about, which was how we could get this job done, like why it's smart to do this, not that. And it just was like such a great setting for us to actually win that work and then move into actually doing the work with him. But yeah, I want to share. And Nicole, which one would you think is a good one to share as far as example wise? I have the one that you sent over.
I think let's pull that one up, because
Okay.
we haven't really explored a Jauntboard for coaches. And I know Charlotte's a coach, and I've been dying to get her opinion on this.
Awesome. Do you want to give it the voiceover, Nicole?
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of context. This is a person. I found her on YouTube, actually. Her name's Anna Runkle, and she creates a ton of content about CPTSD, which, by the way, if you're resonating with this conversation, just look into it. It might be something that you're experiencing. But she's made a lot of content. She's got an awesome website. She went out on her own a few years ago and dove into this world of teaching people about CPTSD. And she's not a therapist, though, so there's a lot of people in the system who are pissed off at her. You shouldn't be talking about this. You're not trained. But she's going full steam ahead. And I had a conversation with her the other day, and she was interested in Jauntboards and how to move into some new territories within her business. So this is just a really quick prototype that we pulled together. But what this is going to enable someone like her to do is, let me pull up my screen, make it bigger. Perfect. Basically, at a quick glance, they can come to this place. It kind of replaces the need for a business card or website potentially. And they can very quickly see, okay, there's information I can learn from her, guides. I can hire her to do coaching. So she does individual coaching, group coaching, and therapist coaching. At least in this prototype she does. And then workshops would be another way to work with her. And go back to the guides real quick. So one of the things that we explored with Jauntboards was being able to take all of this content she's already created all over the internet and package it up and be able to make money passively. So she doesn't have to be the one trading dollars for hours coaching or doing these services all the time. And so if you click into beginning your CPTS journey, that might be the first Jauntboard that someone comes across, for instance. And this would be a free board. This would allow her really just quickly to win trust with the people that would be potentially become her clients. And so it's just a really nice way to organize, lead someone through a very practical user journey of, do I have CPTSD? I don't know. Let me take a quiz. Let me talk to someone. Now I'm like, okay, yeah, this kind of sounds like me. So what resources exist out there? She's got a blog, a podcast. So these are these like little portals that you could take someone to begin to explore. And then she offers courses, memberships, and events. So that's kind of like the top of the funnel Jauntboard that she may have. Another Jauntboard that click into CPTSD relationships. So another Jauntboard that she could create is actually diving into some sort of more niche topic, in this case, relationships. So she has all of these quizzes and YouTube videos that exist. So this really a Jauntboard can become a nice little filing cabinet to put everything in one place, so you can actually like follow. I don't know if you'd really call it a process, but kind of. It keeps you focused and keeps you on a certain track. So that's one of the first things we talked about Jauntboards being able to do for all the content that's floating out there. Just create some organization and allow her to productize what she knows, capture emails, maybe make some money with more high value guides. But she also provides services. So if you want to go back, let's click on workshops. So corporate education, this is definitely where Jauntboards could really shine. When you go talk to an enterprise company or you're trying to sell them anything, it always turns into a big conversation. They need to know exactly what you do, exactly what the process is, what kind of deliverables they're going to get. Like there's just a million questions that they're going to have, and that you're going to have to present yourself as professional to be able to get that $10,000, $100,000, whatever the pricing is, from an enterprise company. So Jauntboards allows her to basically say, here's exactly what you can expect working with me. Here's the process. We're going to do a little discovery. We're going to do a little planning. You get to pick what kind of workshop we do. And by the way, there's the option for ongoing support with me. Here's a couple options there. And this could just be something she sends over. They can book a call with her on Calendly if they want to learn more. They can request a proposal. And the goal, obviously, is that she gets to move into making a proposal and a contract with them. And so, Fletcher, if you kind of want to show what that tool looks like, I'll let you kind of take the demo over for here with this example.
Yeah, certainly. So that was kind of the public view. That's how people could see it. You can share that URL with them. But then on her team side, you can see we get a few other options. The ability to share this specifically with people. And then you can see up here starting a proposal or starting a project. So depending on where you're at with the relationship, a lot of times I start with a proposal. So let's move into this real quick. We'll do an example one for, let's see, Coca-Cola. They need some help. All right, so once you've created your proposal, just give it a second, it'll kind of load up here. But this puts it in a stage where now you can actually work. A lot of times there is a conversation you're having with a potential client where you're going through, you're building their trust, you're kind of giving that M1 meeting where it's about them understanding what your process is. They kind of get a feel for you. They're excited about it. During that call, you can actually work with them and say, okay, here is my process to do this actual workshop. Where are some items that we want to either add unique to yours, which you can just add here at the bottom, or what items are we going to skip, or for instance, okay, we're going to go with this day one, but we're going to skip the day 2 one, or whatever. You can actually kind of go through and customize this proposal to match the time requirements or financial requirements that the client's giving you. Something we love about this is something we've noticed is a process is a proven way to get to the top of a mountain, right? It's like, hey, if we do these things listed here, we're going to get to the top. However, every relationship with clients, they typically, at least for budgetary reasons or time reasons, they want to kind of skip one thing, or they say, hey, we're going to provide something specific. So we'll provide the team survey. And this is a nice, subtle kind of background way to kind of maintain a documentation of what they've asked to skip. Otherwise, they just don't show up in the SOW. And when the project goes off the rails, they're curious why it failed. But this always shows you like, hey, this was the way I promised success. And this is where we decided to make, left turns when we should have gone right. And they can always go back and refer to this as a source of truth as far as what you're going out to build. This is an awesome way to build trust. I think in the whole conversation we're having, this conversation here is so enjoyable. They can see that you've thought through something really well. There's usually example links to each of these items, so they can go back and like see, oh yeah, you're not just like making something up. Here's an example of a stakeholder interview that you've done in the past. Here's what it looks like when you go into programming. And you can also add a proposal deck. And what this lets them do is you can share this link with, in this case, Coca-Cola. And when you're not in the room to kind of be that voiceover, they have this exact process as far as you've laid it out. There's full transparency of what you're going to do. So when they have to get approval from someone that, wasn't in that original meeting, what is being presented is exactly, what was meant to be presented.
So yeah, a lot of people are putting videos up there. So if they have a brand video, yep, or even just like a little walkthrough video, hey, I'm Charlotte. I'm excited for this opportunity. Here's what you can expect. Here's why you can trust me. You can really make sure that conversation is happening in the room if you're not there.
Quick question: where do you add price? Because I'm assuming the price changes depending on what's included.
So a lot of times, what people will do is there'll be more like specifics in an actual like deck, a proposal or whatever. So at the moment, the way Jumpsuit's been using it, and even I've been using it, is there's usually accommodating like proposal deck that just sits up here at the top when you add that link. And that usually has like a general like time frame of what it's going to look like, the cost for it, maybe the team that's going to be involved, all that stuff that's going to be much more custom to that. That's put in here as that proposal deck. And it sits right at the top.
Yeah, I'm just wondering because in interfacing with the potential client, like part of the decision making for them is going to be time and cost.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just wondering if there's a future for Jauntboards to actually add that to this creative section when you're putting together the proposals.
Absolutely, yeah. We're actually really excited about the relationship between this proposal and an actual statement of work, and the merging of those two things together to make them as easy as this. And so, yeah, without going into too much, that we definitely have a roadmap and some awesome features in the work that'll do exactly that. It'll kind of merge your process and what you're promising to the team, timeline, and actual financials of that deal, and then even help prepare an SOW to get that thing underway.
Yeah.
Great question, Anna.
Yeah.
And, and from here, Fletcher, typically we continue to demo the fact that with the click of a button, you can turn this into a project with a link that anyone on the team or the client side can peek into and see where we're at in the step of the process. When the project's done, with another click of a button, you can generate a case study, which will show, especially, I encourage people like go film what you're doing, show your magic in real time and make an awesome case study. And that'll continue to sell yourself. And so normally we spend a lot of time going through that demo. But I'm looking at time. We only have 5 minutes left. So what I'd actually like you to do, Fletcher, is go into the boards section and click on Nicole Ayers. So that was an example. Like I have to create a scope of work with a client and really come across professional. When you're working with individuals, there's a lot more grace, right? You can just casually hop on a Zoom call, have a conversation, maybe shoot them, I don't know, watch this YouTube video or read this book, or here's your homework assignment or whatever. It could be a text, it could be an email. And most likely it's happening all over the place. And that can work. There's nothing wrong with that. But as more and more coaches enter the market and you really want to justify your value and provide an exceptional client experience, Jauntboards becomes really interesting as a platform to create a project or a shared Jauntboard between coach and client. So in this instance, what Anna and I were kind of playing around with was, what if I was her client? What if she was helping me on my journey with CPTSD? And so this Jauntboard really kind of sets up the main ways to get started. I booked a call with her. We did that. I had to watch this video to make sure we're on the same page. I did that. I filled out the intake form. Great. And now everything else is customizable to me. So she can kind of pull in, it can be daily, weekly, whatever the arrangement is. These milestones. So like I said, it could be a quiz, it could be a book to read, it could be a survey, it could be a writing prompt, it could be literally anything that has a link on the internet you could link out to and take them into this whole new portal or give them. And what's neat is like over time, it's all just like documented here. So we were both talking about how cool on both sides that would be, just to be able to say, here's all the work that we did together. Here's all the progress we saw visualized in one place. And then there's never like, hey, Charlotte, you remember that like blog you sent me back at, 3 months ago? Where was that link? It's just all kind of right here. And especially some coaches are trying to actually build practices that scale. Anna's kind of at the point where I think she's got like 600,000 people following her on YouTube right now. And she can't be the one coaching anymore. So she's trying to train other people in CPTSD coaching. And just to have that documentation of like, here's the journey that I led other people on. It helps her train other people. And maybe people want to change coaches, right? Maybe like I've got everything from Charlotte, but like this, or maybe this person's a better fit. So to be able to even like transfer that Jauntboard and that history, that documentation to someone else was kind of an interesting territory we explored. So yeah, Charlotte, I'm just curious because we haven't really had a chance to publicly explore Jauntboards for coaching. How's this landing with you? Does it feel like way more than you need? Does it solve some interesting problems? I'm curious.
Yeah, it's awesome. It actually fits with where I'm going with my coaching at the moment, which is having offline resources for clients, like one-to-one clients, that they can do a lot of the kind of exercises outside of the coaching sessions rather than in them. And then they can bring the learnings from those into the sessions so we can go deeper. I have a question. So if you have a Jauntboard with a client, a coach and a client sharing a Jauntboard, can you make duplicates of that? And then so you're both co-creating within the Jauntboard. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, so you'll be able to edit at any point. So this is the live link. Actually, it's cool. So if Nicole, for instance, was on one end, and then as the client, and then we were on the other end, we can quickly create new steps and phases, or whatever is up next. You can quickly add that, and actually she sees it live. She doesn't have to refresh her page; it just like instantly appears there, so that way she can kind of follow along. And on her side, it'll just kind of suddenly show here what their new steps are. And then she can work through whatever, new homework or whatever's been given on this page.
But if you have a general process where, Nicole and Bailey, generally, like you're going to take them through the same type of thing with slight customizations. We don't have a feature to copy a board yet and make it live, but that's coming soon. You're just looking at V1, but that's in our roadmap to make that simple. Yeah.
Awesome.
And keep in mind, these are all like from a template. So one of these, basically you go through and then, hey, say, create a new proposal. It basically duplicates that original template and puts that. And now you say, okay, this is for Nicole, and then it's customized to her. So that original source you can kind of continue to work on and refine, and then every future project is built from that template.
Yeah,
yeah, and you can include all media, videos, audios,
yep,
slide decks.
Yep, exactly. Not even just media, any link on the internet. So if you're like, hey, this book changed my life, here's a link to click on to buy it. Anything that's a link on the internet, it just becomes a portal.
Yeah.
And so whether you're a coach or a freelancer or a creator, someone looking to create guides, maybe like I said earlier, passive monetization products, or even Jauntboards that could help you capture emails and build your own email list, all of that exists on this platform, and it's free. It's free to build as many Jauntboards as you want. It's free to sell them. Obviously, we'll take a small portion of the sales there. That's how we make money in the free version. And Jauntboards really just becomes a typical SaaS. Start to have to pay for it once you're using it with clients. But you're even allowed to. You're able to do it with one client just to try it out. So that's when you'd have to start paying for it. And we're working towards a future too, where eventually we'll have a marketplace where you can buy and sell processes. You'll be able to peek in and see what other coaches are doing, maybe buy their process or their guides and modify them for you. So there's so many things I could say that we're heading towards, but right now this is where the technology is.
Awesome.
Yeah. And in the spirit of like collaboration, we're excited to be able to like encourage people to connect their Jauntboards. And Charlotte, maybe there's another practitioner outside of what you do that you could create flow to. I really trust this person. I love their guides, or I love their work. Send them there next. Same thing in the creative space, right? It's like, hey, Fletcher, you're a creative guy. Can you build a website? And he's like, well, I can do most of it, but I can't make the videos and I can't do the dev, but I know some people. And so that's the big vision of Jauntboards is like, if you're an independent and you want to build your own independent business, start building it here. It's just a smart way to think through products and services, get everything organized to give you the potential to scale if that's what you decide to do in the future. And then it will eventually open up so many opportunities to connect and really build that mycelial network. Yeah. So anyway, we're at time. Like I said, I wish I could talk to you guys for many more hours on this, but thank you so much for all the thoughts that you contributed. If you have any questions, please reach out. If you need help getting going on Jauntboards, our team is here. So we have the option to do hibachi design with you, where if you're not good at process, maybe you have ADHD and you're like, okay, I can see the value in this, but gosh, I would just stare at a screen I need help. We have people on the team who will hop on there and help you start to build your infrastructure out so you can get going. I think the more people that realize they are good at process and enjoy doing this, it'll be really fun to build that network so we can keep helping each other get going. So thanks so much, everybody. Happy Friday. Happy weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.